Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Ozarks Voices. My name is Tom Peters. I'm the Dean of Library Services here at Missouri State University. Today's date is Tuesday, September 19th, 2017. And our special guest today is Mary Tearney. Mary, welcome.
Thank you.
We are here at the Tierney's home in Leawood, Kansas. You were a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse. Where was the school located?
In Stone County, west of Galena.
Uh-huh.
In
Out in the country?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
All of those schools had official names, and they also had crazy names.
Crazy unofficial names?
Mine was the Mountain Home School.
Uh-huh.
I think the highway must be 248 now toward Cassville. Is that right?
Yeah.
About 15 miles from my parents' home.
Uh-huh.
So I lived with them and taught at the school.
Really?
Its nickname was Possum Trot.
Possum Trot School.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It was about 5 miles from Vine Hill, which was named Hornybuck. Cedar Bluff was never, well, once it was called the Jones School, but this school, and I attended that school,
Uh-huh.
is still called Cedar Bluff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Cedar Bluff because it's on a bluff above Flat Creek,
Mm-hmm.
and it has a row of those cedars between the schoolhouse and the bluff.
Uh-huh.
It had two rather nice facilities. The girls were here and the boys were here, and they were built over the bluff so that we could pollute the creek below. I think of that often and think, oh gee.
So when were you born? What year were you? What year?
1932.
1932. And where were you born?
In my grandmother's house, which is about 2 miles from this particular school.
The school. So
Yes.
you grew up in Stone County.
In Stone County.
Now, I remember you told me once that when you were growing up, strawberries were big.
Well, strawberries have always been a crop in Stone County.
Mm-hmm.
During the Depression and the drought, there were really no crops in Stone County.
Mm-hmm.
After the war, World War II,
Mm-hmm.
there was a resurgence of the truck farming and the strawberries. My father grew strawberries, cucumbers, green beans on the sandy soil.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the strawberries were on the hillside,
Mm-hmm.
but the green beans, the cucumbers were grown in the sandy soil that had been pushed in during the different floods
Yep.
along the James River.
Okay. So down on the James River floodplain, you'd grow
Right.
vegetables.
Yes, and the cucumbers all went to the pickle factory in Springfield.
Oh,
Springfield Pickle Works, I believe it was called.
all right.
So over on the north side of town, I probably could drive to it, but I can't tell you the street it's on. I think it's on was on North National.
Really? Okay.
Then there was another pickle.
Springfield Pickle Works.
I believe that was its name.
All right.
There was another pickle factory in Aurora, and they took the giant pickles. If they were too large for Springfield Pickles Works, then my parents took them to Aurora.
Okay.
They
Wouldn't get as good a price for the larger pickling cubes.
no,
Yeah.
but at least someone would take them.
Yeah.
And Aurora was a little closer to. Well, we always said we called our mailing address was Galena. So everybody said we lived in Galena, but we lived halfway between Galena and Cape Fear on a farm. I was born in 32 during right after the crash.
Right.
And at the beginning of the drought.
Yeah.
So it was extremely difficult for the farmers at that point.
Yeah.
My father had one sister, and my father and mother were married in 1931 in June. I've got the marriage license somewhere. And by the way, if you need that's my grandparents' marriage license. I'll make you a copy if you want.
All right.
Then you can take a picture later. But they were married in 1911.
Yeah, 1911. Okay.
And her sister was one of the witnesses. The gentleman her sister married owned the adjoining farm to my grandparents.
Okay. E.O. Asher?
Eli Oliver.
Eli Oliver Asher.
Right.
And Clara Butler, both of Stone County.
Right.
We're united in holy matrimony.
I believe that the judge's home.
Yeah. Crab?
Adam Crabb.
Adam Crabb. Okay.
Now, the Crabbs.
He was Justice of the Peace.
Right. Well, my grandfather, Ed Hinson, was also a Justice of the Peace.
How many siblings did you have?
There were 8 of us.
Where did you fall in the
Top.
You were
I'm the firstborn.
You were the oldest. Okay. Did you feel an extra responsibility when you were the oldest? Did you have to take care of the younger ones as you got older?
Oh, absolutely. There was no choice.
Yeah.
And they still think of me. They're all of them are alive except one. We lost a brother 2 years ago.
Wow.
But yes, I was their second mother until I went to MSU in 1949.
Okay.
And of course, I was the valedictorian of the class of 13. So I received a scholarship from MSU, which was a year-long scholarship, but because my father needed me at home, he chose to find me a teaching position at Mountain Home Nee Possentrot.
Oh, so you actually taught before you went to college?
Well, no, I went to summer school.
Oh, okay.
Back then, it was, of course, it might have even been Springfield Teachers College then, but if not, it was SMS,
yeah.
SMS had lots of country school teachers. They came from Green Forest, Arkansas, and Gainesville, Wayne's something or other down east of Lead Hill. All of those schools were one-room schools, and these teachers had to continue their education, didn't have enough money to go to a full term. So we all got on the buses then. There was a Trailways bus that ran through from Harrison, Arkansas to Springfield. And every Sunday afternoon it would start picking up, and that's all that rode the bus on Sunday afternoon.
Would it come all the way over to Galena to pick you up, or?
Crane.
Crane, okay.
I guess it followed Highway 13. Well, that maybe 13, but anyway, it went through Hurley, Clever, Nixa to Springfild, picking us up on the route.
On Sunday evenings?
On Sunday evenings, and then the Trailways bus station was down northwest of the old Hearst building.
Northwest.
There's an alleyway between the Hearst building and the Landers building.
Yeah.
And you go through that alley and down some steps, and there's the Trailways bus station.
Okay.
So you come from the Trailways bus station around the square diagonally and pick up the city bus.
Oh.
And we all did it.
Uh-huh.
My memory tells me it was a nickel
To ride the city bus?
to ride the city bus out to the west side of the campus.
Okay. King Street?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
King Street, where they had there was,
Where the Bear Head is now? Is that where you'd get dropped off?
well, there was some restaurants there that
Yeah.
catered to the college kids
Yeah.
at that intersection.
Mm-hmm.
And it was straight west of the main
Carrington?
Carrington Hall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then we all scattered because there were no dorms.
Oh.
There were no dorms till 1950. Oh, maybe 55. You'll have to check the records, but for
Was
years,
Wells the first?
I believe so.
All right. There were
It
no
was
dorms
on
in the.
it was along National.
Yeah, there were no dorms in 49.
No,
Where'd you stay?
all of the houses around the campus were boarding houses. And at 7:45 on Monday, all the doors would open and we'd all march to
Stream out. Huh?
stream out. I lived on McCann, which is one block east.
Uh-huh.
I read in the in maybe the newspaper
Mm-hmm.
that they're building an apartment strip at Page
Yes.
and National,
Yes.
and the office for that construction is on McCann Street.
Uh-huh.
So I have to go down and see if it's in my old house,
Yeah.
because those houses are still there.
Yeah. Well, they just tore down about 4 of those buildings to put up this new
Well, on the National.
On National.
Did they tear down the Ellis building?
No. One was
It's where Dr. Ellis lived.
I don't think so. They tore down an old fraternity, and then 3 older homes.
Well, but the old fraternity, I think, was in his
Really?
home.
Really.
He was the president.
Uh-huh.
And the first summer that I went to summer school, prior to teaching, and I was 16 at that time, of course I had my scholarship and very little money besides that. And when I got all through, I thought, I need a job. So I went and I love to read, so I went to what was the South Library. At that time, we had the North Library and the South Library.
Both in Carrington Hall. What we
Yes,
call
both at
Carrington.
each end.
Yeah, what was it called then? Building A or Building...
Well, I think maybe A.
Yeah.
It was, I guess, the first of the buildings.
Yeah.
Anyway, Margaret Crichton was the librarian. And I told her what I needed. She said, "What are you doing right now?" And I said, "Well, I've enrolled. I have my books." Nothing. She said, "Put your books over there on the ledge." And it was a marble ledge at that time.
Yeah.
Maybe still is. "And I'll teach you how to shelve books." So that was my job. And I discovered that I could shelve books and study. Or I could shelve books and mentally write the essay that Vi Krishel was going to demand in English. Tom Strong had entered school that year as well, although Tom stayed he went straight
He
through.
went straight, yeah.
But he was one of the classmates that I remember.
Yeah.
And Tom's mother, I believe she was a school teacher in a one-room school as well. You'll have to ask him about that.
I will.
Down near Marshfield or Stratford, down in that area. Anyway, so the summer class gave you, I guess, I don't know whether it was 10 hours or 15. Then you could go the August term, which was set up again to help those
like a 4-week
teachers that were going teaching in one-room school. You got 5 hours there. This must have been 10. This must have been 5. So by the time I was ready to really teach in that one-room schoolhouse, I had 15 hours.
Now, did the state have to?
No certification in one-room schools.
Really? And you already had the job?
Yes, I got the job in April.
All right. And so what did you think when you went back in early September and you were teaching for the first time?
Well, I went to get the keys to the school building, and the president of the school board told me that I would have to feed all 13 of the children a hot meal every day.
For lunch?
The federal government had declared that all the public school students would get a hot meal.
This was fall of 49?
Yes. I don't know when, and it may have existed before then. That was the first I heard about it, because they neglected to tell me that when they hired me. All they asked me to do when I went for the interview was write my name on the board. That is all I did.
And they said, "You're hired?"
They said, but I think nobody wanted the job. That's my opinion.
Now, was this part of the time where you had to be? It was all the teachers were women?
Well, all of the teachers in the one-room schools
were women?
No, not all.
Really?
Cedar Bluff had a young man. He was 19 or 20, but he had no more education.
But so there were some young men.
Did
everyone have to be unmarried?
No.
Really?
Not at that point.
No.
Okay. Because the person who had been teaching in Mountain Home left to go to a school called Hideout. I don't know what its real name was, but they could pay her more money. So she left them and went to Hideout. Her daughter, who was in my class in high school, went to Hornybuck. This person who went to Hideout had a sister who taught at Sholton. So, we were all connected in some way.
Did you feel like when you were teaching that you didn't have any colleagues at the school? But would you get together with other teachers in the area periodically?
No.
Really?
Isolated completely. Maybe some of the others might have, but you see, I had to go home every night to my youngest brother was born on the first day of school.
Your first day of teaching, your youngest brother was born?
And in addition to having to prepare meals for 13 students, Dad had taken my mother to the hospital and left me in charge. And there were 2 young children at home, preschool age. So I had to take them with me to school that day.
How'd you keep them occupied?
I have no idea. Feeding 13 the first day of school and taking care of 2 preschoolers. They would have been 2 and 3. After having fed everybody breakfast at home and seen that everybody had clean clothes to go to their school.
They didn't go to your school?
No,
You weren't teaching your siblings.
no. They went to at that point they were all going to Galena.
Oh, okay.
I can't tell you what their ages. Well, I can really. Let's see. My brother would have been in the 10th grade. So my sister was in the 8th grade. Another one would have been in the 5th or 6th grade, and another one would have been in the 3rd grade. So,
Already spread out.
very spread out, but also needed 3 meals a day.
So how far was you said, but I forget, how far was your home from the school? 2 miles?
Oh no. 9 or 10, I guess.
Oh, how'd you get from one place to the other?
Well, we had, at that point in 49, we had a car, and we had a Ford 1-ton flatbed farm truck.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time I drove the truck.
Hmm.
And
Stick shift.
yes.
Yeah.
And I had to pick up some of the students
Really?
on the way to school. And 2 of the girls lived on a hill like this. And I got to stop on the hill and let them cross the street or the road,
Yeah.
get in the truck, and then I got to make it go forward instead of backward.
Let that clutch out. Yeah.
I wonder how I did all that.
Yeah.
I truly do wonder how I did.
It's all gravel roads too. So,
Yes, it
yeah.
was at that time.
Yeah. Back to the strawberries. So you were doing. I imagine the whole family was working on the vegetables and.
Well, actually, I missed that portion of the family's life. And I'll show you a picture in a moment. I believe the strawberries were started up. First, it was tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And Dad had sharecroppers come in, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and clean down the hillsides of trees.
Mm-hmm.
That was always the first step in having any crop on a hillside.
Mm-hmm.
In Stone County, everything was covered with cedar trees.
Mm-hmm.
So the sharecropper would come in, clean out the fields, plant a crop of tomatoes,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be successful. So then we'd go to another hillside, clean out another hillside, plant another summer of tomatoes. There was a canning factory quite close to the farm down on the James River. So it was easy to, and there were plenty of pickers because at that time, everybody in the county needed a job. The kids couldn't get to town. Well, there were no fast food places for them to work. So what they did in the summer was work for farmers.
Yeah.
So they picked the tomatoes, they shocked the wheat, they picked up the bales and hauled them to the barn. All of the, and the city kids really, some of them did, some of them didn't seem to have to, but Dad would go to Galena and pick up a load of kids that wanted to work
Uh-huh.
and bring them out, and they'd pick the tomatoes.
How were they paid, by the bushel or?
There was a tomato crate.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've seen them?
Yeah. Yep. They pay them by the crate.
So they paid him by the crate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have no idea what he paid them. Can't remember.
Yeah.
We had a farmhouse, an extra one. It was barely livable in it, but it belonged to some fine families, and they just abandoned it and sold the farm. We didn't need anyone living in it for a while during the war. So then after that, when the sharecropper came along, he wanted to live in the house. So he lived in the house, and I can't remember that they had a car.
So he was just there to help.
Well, he had a family.
Yeah.
They used a boat to boat across the James to get on the school bus to go to Galena. The beginning of my life was living with my grandparents, struggling through the Depression and the drought. Then
The whole family was living with.
Well, there was just Mom and Dad and myself.
Yeah, but you all were living with
Grandma and Grandpa. Yeah. Then Dad decided that he would open up a store. The store was about a fourth of a mile from this schoolhouse. Little country store. And when we moved there were two of us, my brother Ernie and myself. All of the kids who went to the schoolhouse and the teacher that taught there either drove or rode a horse or walked past the store. So I was almost 4 when I started walking down the road to the schoolhouse with the children. According to the story, which I don't remember, but my mother does, I went every day, and then she would have to run down to the school, go in the schoolhouse, and pick me up and take me back home.
You were just so anxious to get going.
Seems as if I did this for almost 2 weeks when the teacher looked at my mother and said, "Ruth, why don't you just leave her here?" 4 years old. Oh, well, almost 4. And I started...
You weren't quite 4.
No.
3. You were still 3 and you were starting
Well,
school.
I was 4 in November.
Yeah.
So I started school in the one-room school. Must have been pretty successful because I have no bad memories. Then someone else decided they would open a store in the area, which meant that Dad couldn't survive. So he sold his merchandise to the man who opened the store like a half a mile away.
Nearby.
And my dad decided he would run a restaurant.
Oh.
We're still struggling. That would be 36 or 7.
Yeah.
The beginning of the rumbling of the war.
Right.
So he moved to Reed Springs, and we went with him. I think he kept that for a year. Was a rather unpleasant experience because restaurants are tough to run.
Yes.
And it was a restaurant, and at night it was a nightclub. By the time we left, there were 3 children, my sister Sharon, Ernie, and myself. And we went back to the farm, and about that time they decided to build Camp Crowder, which is over at Neosho. And then they decided to build Fort Leonard Wood. And then later on they built Sunflower out at Eudora. So somehow my father decided that he could be a carpenter. So he built himself a plywood toolbox. I think somebody still got it. Painted it black. I put a hammer and some other stuff in it, and off he left. He went to Camp Crowder. He went to Fort Leonard Wood. He went to Sunflower. Maybe. I think there's one more. Can't remember what that was. So
just building these.
Just
camps.
building the facilities. As soon as the one was built, they were shifted off to the next. Now, whether the same company hired them or whether there was a group of them that drove together. Or whether they just knew this was done and this one was coming up, but he always worked. Then in 1943, there were no more facilities being built, or was it 42? Anyway, my dad came back, rented a farm, and it was a very nice farm, very successful farm, but the James River farm where they finally settled and stayed was in bankruptcy. So my father got enough money gathered together to buy the property. There was about, I think, 600 acres at that time.
Oh, wow.
But it was on both sides of the river.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, a little tough. No road into the other side.
Yeah.
We boated across for years.
Really?
You could drive a tractor or,
The water is lower.
four-wheelers
Yeah.
in. Dad finally built a road. Then they sawed down the lumber for the current house. And it's the one we moved into when they finally got it constructed.
Uh-huh.
They sawed and milled the lumber and built the house out of lumber off
Right.
of the...
Right there.
Yeah.
And when was that built, roughly? 40?
We moved in January of 44,
Uh-huh.
in the middle of the war. And that's probably why they had to saw their own lumber,
Yeah.
because it wasn't available.
Yeah. House is still standing?
Still standing. Has much improved.
Mm-hmm.
We moved in without any interior walls or insulation.
Was this a shell of a house? Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Right.
No indoor plumbing?
No.
2-story?
1 story. 3 bedrooms. I think they bought the plans out of a catalog.
Sears Roebuck.
I don't know what, but I can vaguely remember them sitting and talking about which one of these plans would be best. I don't think they chose the best one, but anyway. Dug a well, a good well, but it was a pump until the REA came through in 48, maybe. Seems like that's about right. That's when we got running water and a washing machine in the basement, a refrigerator,
Lights.
electric stove, lights.
Radio? Did you have a radio?
I'm sure we did. My brother is not alive to tell you the story of how they pulled the wiring with mules because the hills were so irregular and so hard to get the electricity in and out of the farmhouses. So
Use mules, huh?
used mules. And mules are tough. They can go through most anything.
Any memorable floods on the farm?
Actually, the worst flood came in, let's see, Phil would have been 8 or 9. Add that 67. The lake flooded almost up to the house.
Really?
It was incredible. Jim and I, we lived here in Kansas City, and Phil was spending summers at the farm, so we went down that weekend just to see how things were going. And there's our son sitting in an old Long John boat.
John boat?
John boat.
Yep.
Sitting out there just off the barn fishing. It was incredible. It didn't stay up very long, of course, but they had not created the method of letting the water out.
Oh, the overflow? Oh.
That had not occurred to them that it would ever get that high.
Yeah. So this was Table Rock
Yes.
Dam that backed up. Reservoir.
Well, and that's 1958 is when the lake filled up. One trip. They weren't really quite ready for the rain that came. But one day it was a river, and the next day we had a lake. Dad let people, in fact, talk to Dean Huff. He can tell you about it because he fished at my father's farm a lot. There was a road between the house and the barn. But they've torn the barn down, so you can't see it. It was built in 1925. Wonderful old barn. Anyway, to go to the lake to fish, one of the routes was through my father's farm, so he put a little box up, and you dropped $2 in it, and you could go fish.
Go fishing. Yeah.
It was Scout's honor and
upper reaches of the
James.
Yeah, of the Table Rock Reservoir. Yeah.
Right.
Huh.
I think they say that the lake begins over at Galena somewhere.
Yeah.
So we would be 9-10 miles south.
Okay.
But with good crappie fishing, good bluegill fishing.
And David Huff used to come down?
Oh, yeah.
Go fishing.
When I first got involved, 2006 or 7, with the university, the first thing David said to me was, "Are you Ernest Asher's daughter?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "Do you live on Cane Bottoms?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "I know you." So we did
I apologize.
lived through no problem, the Depression and the drought, and moved to the James River Farm. And then we were all in luck because the bus took us to Galena schools. And now we had to walk up the hill. It was a quarter of a mile up the hill, Jim, to the highway.
Oh, yeah.
At least. They didn't come to the door. But after I graduated and my brother graduated, they started coming down the hill to the door.
Did you feel cheated?
I did.
And you were 16 when you graduated from high school?
I graduated in 49, so that makes me almost 17.
Almost 17.
I graduated in May at 16 and turned 17.
So you went right up to Springfield to SMS, took a summer's...
True.
So you were teaching when you were 17 years old. 13
Actually,
students.
I was teaching when I was 16 for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
My aunt, my father's sister, was an old maid school teacher, we all called her. She eventually married and had a couple of children, but she had stayed in the rooming house on McCann Street. So, of course, I had no choice. I was going to stay in the rooming house on McCann Street. There was 2 bedrooms and a sun porch on the first floor, and 3 bedrooms on the second floor. So that's 3 times 2 is 6, 10 girls, and in the summer, the landlord slept on the summer porch so that she could rent 1 more room to 2 more people.
Summer was the boom time.
Summer was the boom time.
Yeah.
The year-round students were a little more particular about their accommodations. We had 1 bathroom and a tub, no shower. But none of us had heard of showers at that point in our lives anyway. That was when SMS did, let's see, Monday was you skipped 8 o'clock. Tuesday you skipped your 9 o'clock class. Wednesday you skipped your 10 o'clock class. Thursday you skipped your 11 o'clock class. And then Friday, all your afternoon classes were canceled. So you could catch the bus to go back home on Friday.
So you wouldn't spend the weekends in
Nobody spent the weekends in Springfield at that time. The campus was absolutely empty.
And roughly how many students were at SMS?
I have no idea.
A couple thousand, maybe.
I don't know how many summer students there would be.
Yeah.
Probably most of them in the basic courses, the English, the history, the geography. I took library science because I was interested in it. Psychology, education, which was supposed to teach you how to teach school, and it never did.
You had to learn by doing?
I hope that it's possible to give the young students coming to MSU at this time some teacher training that's effective.
Yeah.
I did my student teaching under Estelle Funkhauser, who used to own Crystal Caves. No, what's north of Springfield? Fantastic Caves?
Fantastic Caverns.
Cavern. She owned Fantastic Caverns.
Really? Northwest.
But I got no training in teaching because when I came into the classroom to do my student teaching, my resume said that I'd already taught school 3 or 4 years, so she just walked out of the room. And there were many other teachers that that's the way she handled us, because we had all that experience. We ought to know what to do. And I guess we did.
Yeah.
I did save my money that first teaching experience in Mountain Home, and I went summer, August, fall, winter, spring, summer, August.
Oh.
From 1950 through 51.
Okay.
And I had enough hours then to teach in a town school.
Oh.
Not a city school.
Oh, so it was like rural, one room, town, city was the pecking order?
Sure.
Yeah.
City schools, you had to have a degree. No, you had to have 120 hours. But so I went to Nixa starting in 1951. And the bus still brought me from Crane to Nixa. I still went home every Friday.
Trailways bus?
Yes, Trailways. Now, Greyhound ran north of the city, and maybe east. I just know that Trailways went south. And again, I stayed in this same boarding house on McCann when I did that whole summer through summer. But then I had enough hours, of course, to go to Nixa, and I stayed at Nixa 4 years and went to summer school and August in that same 4-year period. So I was ready to teach in Springfield.
When you were in Nixa, did you have a room or something? Where would you stay during the week?
Stayed in the upstairs of a couple's home. An old couple that had grown children. They had 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms upstairs. 4. And the high school bookkeeping, typing, business section hired a single girl to teach, and she needed a room. So actually the school superintendent found us a place to live, because we both had said, you know, where will we live in Nixa? And he said, I'll find you a rooming house, and he did.
Really?
And it was close to the school.
Within walking distance?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
None of us had cars.
Yeah.
And it was, at that time, Nixa, grade school, junior high, high school, gym, the kitchen, every stage, everything was in one building. I don't know how many, they have 2 or 3 high schools, and
it's grown quite a bit.
oh my goodness, yes. I was down for the 50th reunion, I believe it was the 50th reunion, and couldn't believe the growth in the.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd driven through on
Nixa's really grown.
Yeah, Nixa's. It's just a suburb of Springfield.
Well, don't tell the people in Nixa that. Two questions for you. So, both when you were teaching in the one-room schoolhouse and also when you were in the boarding house in Springfield, what did you do for meals?
Well, of course, my noon meal was the one I was cooking for my students.
Yeah, what would you cook? Would you have a casserole or what was it?
Oh, no, we had...
sandwiches?
Sometimes we had sandwich. Sometimes we had salmon patties.
Salmon patties.
Well, you realize my budget was... They were supposed to bring a quarter if they could afford it. If they couldn't afford the quarter, they brought food supplies. I'd get gallon cans of milk, unpasteurized, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So we had lots of puddings. I was smart enough to know. In fact, my first major was home economics. So anyway, we'd have puddings, lots of mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
Green beans or peas out of a can.
Yeah.
Took 3 cans of whatever we did
To feed the 13
to feed the kids.
Yeah.
There wasn't much time to really prepare.
Yeah.
You know.
You had a stove?
Oh, the worst kerosene oil burner in the world that smoked everything up. But that was the stove.
Yeah. No refrigerator?
No.
Yeah.
Never, and the water was from a well with a pump. Yeah. Carried it in.
Wash up out there too afterwards, or would the kids wash up, or who would?
Yeah, everybody dug in and helped. I don't know that I made them. It just seemed like that we all knew that it needed to happen. And of course, you washed in a dishpan, you rinsed in a dishpan, you threw the water out. Mm-hmm. You'd ride with a dish towel, which I took home, washed, and brought back some more the next day. Mm-hmm. But all of the teachers in the one-room schools were doing the same thing. I never did talk to the young man who taught at Cedar Bluff during the time I taught at Mountain Home. But he lived with my grandparents and slept in their living room because they didn't have a spare bedroom.
Slept on the sofa?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it was very simple living, I would guess you would put it. My grandmother was a good cook, so I'm sure he got a good breakfast and a good dinner. I have no idea how he didn't have a car. Now, I stopped at this little store every day on the way to school and bought the groceries, usually for the week if I could. But anyway, so they'd bring the milk in a gallon lard can. That's about all I remember getting. I don't remember getting potatoes or vegetables or eggs. No, don't remember that at all. But I do remember the milk. And occasionally I would cook a box cake. Certainly not time to mix one up. But school began when the school bus for the Galena school system drove right by this Mountain Home School where I was teaching. So all the children on the west side of the school got picked up by the Galena school bus. And then they would stop and let the kids off. So school started when the bus let the kids off. And then it stopped when the bus came and picked them up to take them home.
So it depended on when the bus arrived. It wasn't a set time.
No, well, you couldn't because once they got there, they were yours to deal with.
And you had to.
And they were yours to deal with until the bus picked them up and took them back. And their older brothers and sisters were on the bus going to high school.
Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy.
The other question.
Fortunately, that was the last year of the school. And I had been very frugal, so there was some money left over in the budget when they wrote me my last check. So they gave me the proceeds, which was,
Really?
I think, somewhere around $1,000.
Yeah.
But the next year, all the kids got on the bus, which was the sensible thing to have done years ago.
Oh, so you were the final teacher in this school.
Yes, I was. And
And then they closed it.
but
Consolidated?
well, it was already sort of consolidated because the upper school children already went to the Galena school. But yes, they eliminated most all of the country schools in 1950. I think that the Cedar Bluff school held school one more year. But basically, if the bus went close enough that you could get on the bus, then you went to town to school, which was
So
smart.
about 1950 was the end of the era.
I think that's about right.
And you thought it was overall a good, wise decision. Should have been done years before.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
For one thing, my responsibility, the hardest one, was these children in the 8th grade had to pass a history constitution combination test in order to go to high school. Now, that was not required of the students who were already on the bus going,
Oh.
but it was an old rule
Yeah.
from superintendents of years ago, I guess. So I had 4 8th graders who had to pass that exam. And they weren't very interested in studying at home. They were a bit like I was. I had cows to go home and milk,
Right.
chores to do.
Right.
So my biggest, in my opinion, biggest responsibility that year was to see that those 4 students passed so they could go to high school. Yeah. So, and I had to type out a test, send it and get it approved. I don't know that I had to type it, but I did type it.
Yeah.
Get approved, and then I had to administer it and swear that I had not helped them answer the questions.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest responsibilities I had. Then the other was a 1st grader who had no experience in school, had no experience with the alphabet or numbers. But the family had been too busy surviving the war.
Yeah.
And
So he was just, that child was just.
but they all were like that.
Yeah.
The 1st graders in that
You had to
area
start at the beginning.
at the beginning.
ABCs, 1, 2, 3s.
Yeah. And that was a struggle because I guess I always assumed because, well, with the 8 of us, we certainly had to count. Probably at the age of 2, because is that my milk or your milk? Or
Right.
get our share, we had to be strong.
Right.
And we were strong, still are. But in talking with other teachers, even in Nixa, the children did not come with any preparation at all. There were no daycares, there were no nurseries, there were no preschools, no Head Starts. It was, here he is.
No kindergarten.
No.
Yeah.
No
You
kindergarten.
start 1st grade?
I
5
don't,
years old, or when would you? Typically?
6.
6. You'd start 1st grade.
I don't believe that there was even kindergarten at that time in Springfield. Because I taught at Delaware for 2 years, which is just a block or 2 east of where Cliff Smart lives.
Mm-hmm.
It may be just one block.
Mm-hmm.
Delaware, Portland, and Bennett
Mm-hmm.
was considered the premier school of the Springfield Public Schools.
Mm-hmm.
And man, they had a principal like you wouldn't believe. Now, I loved her. She taught me more about teaching than anyone ever had. But she was tough. Your room had to be clean. Your room had to be attractive. Your students had to be involved. She came in and observed you several times a year and wrote you little notes telling you how good you were or what you could do to improve. Some of the teachers just really disliked her, but I thought she was wonderful.
She was good. Huh?
Yeah, she was good.
The other question I want to ask you is both growing up and then when you got to SMS and when you were Nixa, what did you do for fun?
Not much.
Never had dance parties or pie suppers or...
Mostly it was school involved.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, in Nixa, you went to all the basketball. No football in Nixa, just basketball. But you went to all the basketball games.
Only boys then. There's no women's basketball.
No.
Yeah.
They tried a women's volleyball, but the girls had not had enough experience in team behavior
Mm-hmm.
to work together to produce a satisfactory conclusion. So, and volleyball takes more girls. They might have had a success with 5 on a team, but how many are on a team? 9 or 10?
Yeah, yeah.
It was pretty hard to get 9 or 10 girls at that age to cooperate.
Yeah.
But we had a good basketball team in Nixa, and you dressed up to go to the basketball game.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my.
It was a social event.
It was a social event.
Mm-hmm.
Homecoming was a social event for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents were very supportive of their school system in Nixa.
Mm-hmm.
Very supportive. They had a strong PTA, a strong board. My first superintendent was Ben Lee. The second one was George Espy. I believe those are the only 2 I worked under. Then the coach, the basketball coach, was Bill. I could have told you a moment ago.
Yeah.
And he went to Nixa, to Drury as a college coach. And during my last year at SMS, Bill Thomas and I took algebra together. Neither one of us had any background in math.
It's tough.
So algebra scared us to death. And I didn't know Bill Thomas until I got in the class. But somehow we ended up next to each other, and I said, Bill, I have no idea what he's doing. He says, I don't either. The kid over here on my side says, I do. I'll help you. I wish I could remember his name. He took Bill and me under his wing and got us through that class. And I'll never forget neither one of us thought we were going to make it.
You passed.
And when I see Bill, we always said, oh, we made it. None of it seemed hard. None of it seemed impossible. And it was always exciting to have independence, money in my pocket, because that had not happened during the drought and the Depression. Nobody had any money in their pocket.
Yeah.
You were doled out one pencil and expect to keep track of the one pencil. I don't know how other people would feel about those years, but for some, I'm sure it was quite a struggle. if I hadn't had all these brothers and sisters, and a mother and a dad, and a wonderful grandmother who fed us amply every Sunday, no matter where it was, you were home on Sunday to go to Grandma's.
She made a big Sunday dinner.
Oh my.
Yeah.
And her garden was huge and, typical, not a weed in it. Had a root cellar for what she couldn't can. They did, I think about and they had a little stream that ran in front of the house. So when she needed water for the garden, she just walked down and picked up a bucket of water and, yeah.
Always had water, huh?
And Grandpa had mules, and he could plow the garden with the mules, and they wouldn't step on the plants.
Really?
And you as a farmer, sort of, she had saved old window glass from when the window had broken, I guess. So in February, she'd make her lettuce bed.
Oh, yeah.
And then cover it with the glass panes so it could get the hot rays of sun. So she had lettuce before anyone else even had theirs coming out of the ground.
Well, thanks for sharing your memories with us.
Well, I'm trying to think what else. Oh, there was Fisher's Highboy, right? When we got old enough to have spare money and had a friend who had a car, we'd always go to Fisher's Highboy. On St. Louis Street?
I believe so.
And then the year that I married Jim, I'd graduated, but I was still in Springfield. It was a space of from May to August. So a friend and I decided we'd work at Sears. We'd never done retail before. I never wanted to do retail.
Now, was that the Sears store
on St. Louis
just
and
down from the
Kimbrough?
Shrine Moss there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Big store.
Yeah.
What
department were you in?
Well, I got stuck in men's pants and socks. Never. Oh, gee. My friend got stuck in ladies' lingerie, and we couldn't decide which was worse. But it's nice to have had that experience because we now know that we don't ever want to do that again.
There's no doubt anymore. In your mind. Yeah.
And then I married Jim. We came to Kansas City. October 30th of that fall.
And what year was that?
1958.
58, okay.
We had just settled into our apartment, got a nice little schedule going. The ladies across the hall from us said, we're both teachers, and they noticed that I didn't have anything to do, so they got me a job as a substitute.
Substitute? Oh.
Yes.
Kansas City Public Schools?
Kansas City, Kansas.
Kansas City, Kansas, okay.
And again, most wonderful principal, the first assignment I got. I never left. You
were a permanent substitute.
Well, she was a principal a half a day and a teacher the other half. She decided that I could be her teacher by half.
So she went full-time as principal?
So she went full-time as principal. I don't know how she pulled it off, but anyway. Then that left me just half a day because the other teacher had the morning session. So then she decided that I could teach music to the first graders and that wouldn't be very hard, and it really wasn't. You get some records and put it, back then we didn't have CDs.
Right.
Got records and put them on a phonograph, and they sing along, and everybody's just happy as can be.
Yeah. So you were teaching full-time in essence? Music in the mornings and classes in the afternoon,
and then Jim got transferred to Andalusia, Alabama on Halloween night of 1958.
Oh, you weren't there very long.
Well, because I had this teaching assignment and I felt guilty about saying no, and he didn't know where he was going to live anyway because he'd never been there before. And now you realize this is the deep South.
Mm-hmm.
So he went in November 1st, October 30th, and found us a place to live. And then I followed him at the end of the school semester in December.
Mm-hmm.
So we stayed in Andalusia till September of 59. Then he was transferred to Little Rock, Arkansas.
So just 1 year in Andalusia?
Part of a year.
Yeah.
From October to September.
Yeah.
Then we just had adjusted to Little Rock in 6 weeks when they transferred him back to Kansas City home office.
Who was he working for?
Burns and McDonald.
Oh, Burns and
Engineering.
McDonald. Oh, okay.
Then we came back to Kansas City, Missouri. For 7 months, and then he was transferred to Fairfax, Virginia, and Dulles Airport. So we had a long assignment there.
Building it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Resident engineer. Then we left Fairfax in February of '62 and went to Marion, Illinois. Now, is that a shock?
Marion's down there pretty
Cold country.
pretty close to southern Illinois, isn't it?
Oh, driving distance to Cairo.
Yeah.
Little Egypt.
Yeah.
Purple Crackle.
Yeah.
We were there from February to October. And Phil was beginning to be a 4-year-old. And I said, one of us has got to sit down because this child's going to go to school.
Right. We can't.
He cannot hop from. So we came to Kansas City, we bought a house, and we've been here ever since. He still traveled a lot, but Phil and I stayed home. So I've had quite an adventure.
Really? Amazing.
No?
And it all started in Stone County.
Well, that's what our son said to his dad once. How did you find her, Dad?
Where did you meet?
A good friend of mine who was a college classmate became a home economist and a home extension agent for the state down in Christian County. The state had a convention down at Rockaway Beach when Rockaway Beach was a bustling place. Had a band, all of it.
Yeah.
My friend Mary June went to the convention and called me and said, "Oh, I've met these two rich fellows. They must be rich because they're riding in a black Lincoln." She said, "I'll take one if you'll take the other." I said, "Well, it's August, it's hot, it's kind of boring in Springfield, nothing's going on." So I said, "Sure." Well, he came in a Lincoln. He didn't come in he came in a Plymouth, not a Lincoln. But I went anyway, and that's the story.
He picked you up?
Well, no, he called me and asked for a date.
Yeah.
And he picked me up in the Lincoln and took me to the power plant, which was why he was in Springfield. They'd had a little problem down there, and they wanted him to come down and investigate.
He took you on a date to the power plant?
He's in a suit and a tie, looking really nice, and took me to a power plant.
So did sparks fly?
Well, he said, "You can sit in here." It was a closet about as big as this table. with a light bulb. I'll be right back. 1 hour. Big problem, I guess. But I was still
You
hungry.
thought, what am I into here?
Yeah, right. Should have known right that minute. Correct. Anyway, we went out to dinner to the Shady Inn. It was a nice dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Shady Inn was one of the finest places. Were you able to experience that?
No.
Gee.
I've heard many stories though about the Shady Inn.
Wednesday night dinner was prime rib, baked potato, French onion soup and a salad, and a little half bottle of wine. $1.99. Oh, it was good.
Good.
And when they served your potato, you could have real bacon bits, green chopped onions, cheese, sour cream, butter. I don't know what all was on this little. You could help yourself to as much as you wanted.
Oh boy.
It was really super good.
Sounds good.
Well, you knew you grew most everything that you ate.
Yeah.
We were always thrilled because my grandmother raised white leghorn hens, 200. And so in the spring, the mail carrier would bring her a postcard saying your chickens will arrive tomorrow. Well, they did.
Yeah.
And
Kind of warn you that
they came out of Clinton, Missouri.
you get a box full of live chickens.
Got a box of 100 chickens.
Yeah.
There was a division in there, 25 on a side.
Uh-huh.
She had a little coal stove with a little hood on it to keep the heat
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Have you seen those?
No, but I can imagine.
Oh, you need. I just would love to have one of them. They're just so cute. They're just little tiny things.
Uh-huh.
And there was a little protector around it so the little chickens couldn't get into the fire.
Yeah.
And she had this brooder house that she papered in wallpaper, several layers, so it would be really warm.
Yeah.
And she'd always get hers early. And then if she just, as soon as they got big enough to eat, all the roosters got either fried or canned with a pressure cooker.
Uh-huh.
And there was nothing like those casseroles made with that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, was that good.
Chicken noodle casserole.
And Grandpa and Grandma raised their own beef, only it was veal. And he put it in the barn and fed it corn for X number of weeks so it would be tender.
Yeah.
And then built a fire down by the creek and filled these oil drums full of water and hung that beef on a chain from a tree and in and out, dunked it out and scraped off the...
Yeah.
And then they went to work. But then the winters were cold
Yeah.
enough that they could hide the quarters of the beef in the barns and just go out and...
Yeah.
I can remember my
It's cool
mother
enough.
doing that for years.
Cool enough. Yeah.
But, you know, it was much colder.
Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't freeze, but it stayed
Yeah.
cold enough
Almost
that it
like
would
it's
not spoil.
Refrigerated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then with the pigs, oh, did they scream when Grandpa stuck them with a knife.
Stuck pig. Yeah.
Yeah, he was stuck
Yeah.
pig,
Yeah.
always in the jaw.
Right. Yeah.
And then you had sausage and pork chops and pork ribs and everything on it. And then the pork loins got treated with the pressure cookers like the chicken did. And some of the beef got that big pressure cooker. You ever seen one of those?
I've seen a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my.
Oh,
She
good.
used that year round.
Well, thanks again.